I've been given 40 minutes to talk tonight, and then there'll be about 10 minutes of question time. I don't know if you heard about my reputation. I tend to go over schedule. I was 7 minutes over schedule today in today's run, so I'll do my best. I'll do my best to try and stick to 40 minutes, but I might take a few shortcuts and zap through a few slides if I'm getting down on schedule. Okay, the title of the talk is Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, Tale of Two Races, Preparation, Positivity and Performance. And when I came in here, came with my family last night and saw the Endurancelife, the new logo, never, never, never give up. And I sort of was commenting to myself, not too sure about that. If I did it, I'd say that always, always, always keep going, because negative, never give up, but negative. And my son sort of heard me saying, oh, I'm not too happy with that. And he says, yeah, you can't do this race because you gave up. And if anyone's heard, it's called Tale of Two Races, because I've done Ultra Trail Mont Blanc twice now. Well, actually, 1.5 times. 2009 I finished it, and this year I got halfway. Well, not even halfway, so I gave up. So I shouldn't be here. I'm a bit of a fraud. Anyway, I've got a little bit of a background in sports science. Done a master's in sports science, but tonight's talk is, I'm just going to actually get my time there. Yeah, okay. Tonight's talk is about my views. Okay, you won't see much academic research in the talk tonight. It's based on me. My research is based on a sample size of 1 myself. Okay, so probably this is probably more appropriate. This is Ultra Stu talking, and if you're interested in what I'm talking about tonight, go to Ultra Stu blogspot, have a read, but don't expect to be there for 5 minutes. You'll need a few hours. Okay. Good opportunity to mention my sponsors. Innovate, good quality shoes, they're great, and Montaigne give me kit. So actually, I can take this off because I'm getting a bit hot. Okay, but if you need quality stuff, and one of my beliefs is I spend a lot of time preparing for these races, so I make sure the stuff I use is quality, so I'm not let down. So they're great stuff. So I'm going to talk about Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, but a lot of this is about the positivity, and I did a talk up in Yorkshire a few weeks ago, and some of the people were sort of like, yeah, but it's not positivity, and so since then I've developed a model called the Race Focus Energy Fatigue model, and hopefully I'll have a few minutes, or if I don't get held up, and I'll try and introduce that, because it shows where the positivity fits in, because most people know preparation influences performance, but that's a new concept. And my aim tonight is to try and get you to think about your way you approach your training, your preparation, whether you're doing trail marathons or trail ultras. It's applicable, because if you did the marathon today, it was like doing an ultra. It was so blooming long. So let's move on. So this is 2009, and this is 2011. Okay, so as I said, it's about my observations of myself, but also observations of other runners. I read a lot of books, I listen to podcasts and stuff. So, and one of the things I've noticed is that runners generally want to achieve their best, okay? So my talk is about people wanting to achieve their best. So it's just not about finishing, it's trying to finish in as fast a time as possible. And I think most runners are in that case, wanting to do their best. But also, I've noticed that most runners tend to think quite negatively about their own abilities. You'll see sometimes I've got this funny font, so whenever that font appears, that relates to my model, okay? So hopefully you'll see various bits during the first 25 minutes, and then in the last 15 minutes, hopefully it will all fall into place. So many people tend to think negatively about their own perceptions of their ability. You know, we're not from Kenya, we're not from Ethiopia, so therefore we can't run fast. So, and that's does hinder performance. I'm going to talk about that during my presentation. to start off, I'm going to talk about race goals, and that's, you know, if you're going to prepare for an event, don't get up about the word race. Race just means a special event. You know, most people don't race against other competitors; they're racing against themselves, challenging themselves. Okay, so don't get hung up. You know, I'm the same. I just want to challenge myself. If some people to finish ahead of me or behind me, that's irrelevant. It's about me challenging my own self. But before I ever do a race, in my preparation, they're the first 3 questions I ask. What do I want from this race? And usually, it's a very wishy-washy response to do my best, which is, I'll talk about, you know, I want to do my best to as good as I think I'm capable of. And then, you know, these questions, why do I want to do that? How much do you, and you've got to sort of get that clear right at the very start of your preparation. You know, may need to finish, but I want to finish in a certain time. Place, I can't control that, so I focus on the time. You know, if Jez Bragg turns up or Gillian Journet, it's going to be difficult to beat these guys. Or even this hawker, she turns up. I can't control that, so that's my focus. And these wants, are they realistic? And then the question is, what do you base what you think you can do on? What's your evidence you think you can do today's marathon in 4 hours or the ultra in 7 hours or whatever? What's evidence? And usually it's based on your past races, your past performance. So that's a bit about myself. Who am I? Okay. This is from 1977, the Wellington schools. You might have picked up a little bit of an accent. When I go home, I get called a pom, because I sound like a pom. But I'm from Wellington, and that's like the county champs. And in 1977, I did the county champs as an under 15.5-year-old. And if you look carefully in there, you'll see me. And there's me, 77th out of 95. And as I was going through this presentation, my son Chris looked at that and goes, "Gee, Dad, you only beat just 10 people. That's rubbish," you know. And I was rubbish. My perception of myself, I am rubbish. 77th out of 95. And that was, you know, this negativity which everyone has, their self-perception. And it was in 1977, I thought, right, I've got to sort this out. I don't want to be rubbish. So I thought, what can I do? I'm rubbish at, this was a 16-minute race. I know, I'll run a marathon. So at the age of 17, I lied on the entry form, and I ran my first marathon in 1980 as a 17-year-old, and that's about 200 metres from the finish line. And I set up my blog about 1.5 years ago, and I did a blog post on my reflections on my first marathon. And that's what I wrote back in 2010. And it was really interesting. I looked back at that this year, and I thought, look how negative that is. It was my last chance to be a runner. You know, and if I couldn't go under 3 hours, I'm never going to be a runner. I might as well give up. I did break 3 hours, so hence I'm still running now, 31 years later. But, you know, you can see how this negativity does affect the way you think about yourself, the goals you set. But other people also have these low self-perceptions of themselves. Have a look at that. You know, the running track seemed the only place left to be able to be good at something. You know, the Oxford University Athletic Club selected this runner from a bunch of also-rans. He considered himself an also-ran, and no hoper couldn't run. Who was it? Roger Bannister. So even he had these negative, this idea that he was rubbish, but he overcame it and set the sub-4-minute mile. And so from 1980, I realised that I somehow had to overcome this, and in the last 31 years, I managed to overcome this idea that I was rubbish. I did Ironman, and the whole time I was wanting to be good at something, cycling. Actually, that should say 42. I didn't want to put up there 42 just in case of DNF, you know. Because I did a talk in France prior to UTMB, and I had it that I had done or will be doing 17 Ultra Trails, so I didn't want to do that again. But I ran for Great Britain this year, so somehow I'd gone from this rubbish runner to GB, and it took a lot of effort to do that. And in the last 4 or 5 years since I've moved into ultras, I've really discovered a bit about myself, and I've discovered about how I prepare, and hopefully I can share a little bit of that today. As I said, in 1977, I got, beat 10 people or so, and I thought, I've got to do something about this. So in 1978, I started training. This is my coach. He was my music teacher. Here I am as a 15-year-old. And 31 years later, I caught up with him. And over that time, it's really funny. He probably didn't notice his hair went from black to white because the change was so gradual. And I didn't notice that I actually had developed as a runner, and I was no longer that rubbish runner as a 15-year-old. And if you think to yourself, when you're at school, your maths teacher might say, you're rubbish at maths. And 30 years later, you still think yourself rubbish at maths. And it's really important that you realise that you grow and you develop and you improve over the years. But because it's so gradual, you tend not to notice it. And so, a lot can happen in 31 years. So are you still considering yourself that rubbish runner as a 15-year-old when you got last in PE and running around and got put off sport for life, So, maybe it's time you change the way you thought about yourself as an athlete. A lot has happened since when you were at school and you hated PE. So, over these 31 years, I've spent a lot of time working on that, and it took me 27 years to work it out. So like I say, it's maybe not always good to look at your past races because that will limit you. If you've always been second to last, midfield, you'll always think you're going to be midfield. Your recent training, sometimes if you've done some good training, that will give you confidence and that will maybe get you to forget about that. Your training, you'll improve. But I'll come to this in a wee while. But I start off with race goals, and the race goals strongly influence performance. And I know I'm going to be talking about Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, but I just want to show you this little video clip. What I've realised that what distinguishes these good performers, and people might think of me as a good performer, is not what we're born with, not our genes, it's the way we think. And I've tried to look at these elite, and I've realised that that's all that separates them.
James has set himself an extraordinary goal in what for him are totally alien conditions.
Okay, this is
in a field of 1,000 athletes, he wants to finish in the elite top 50.
When the going gets tough in the middle of the day, that's where I want to believe my rightful place is. And I think if you can get to a situation where you believe your rightful place is somewhere, you've got far more chance of achieving it.
Okay, so that's from James Cracknell, and he talks about this belief. Now, I don't know, he can't bloody run, but yet he felt, not even a runner, he could get in the top 50, and I don't know if you've seen the DVD, it's superb. Everyone was saying, no way, you're not going to get in the top 50. But he had belief, and he did get in the top 50. So, that belief will strongly influence your performance. You have your goals. If you have a goal that you're going to finish midfield, you will finish midfield, okay? But you can't just say, I want to be an Olympic champion, because you're not going to believe that. You've got to have evidence, and we'll try and talk about the evidence that will contribute to you generating that belief to achieve these goals. So anyway, the next guy's talking about Marathon des Sables, so let's go on to Mont Blanc. Okay, I did this in 2009, and I did half of it in 2011. It is one of the most awesome races you could ever do, and hopefully, maybe at the end of today's talk, you'll be inspired to do it. It starts in Chamonix, in France, and this is Mont Blanc, the highest mountain in Europe. And you go from France into Italy, into Switzerland, and back to France. It is amazing. Yeah, you have to carry your passport, It's fantastic. As you can imagine, although we run around the mountain, it's got a few climbs. It's quite hilly, and you thought today's was pretty tough. You try and climb it, that's 2,600 metres from 800 to 2,600. It's pretty tough. So when I was preparing for 2009, my first thing was to do research on the race and research on myself. Okay, so how long is it? 104 miles, nearly 10 kilometres vertical. That's a long way up. There's 10 climbs, 17 feed stations, 24 timing points. The first thing you've got to do, I mean, if I said to you, I want you to run really hard, go really fast, what would be your first question you'd say back to me?
Yeah, when am I doing it?
Yeah, or how far do you want me to run for? Yeah? You know, or how long for? So you've got to have some idea what your likely finishing time is. Because you finish your time, you know, if I'm going to run for 40 hours, I'm going to expect to run at a different pace than I'm going to run for 20 hours. So I can't just go there and think, right, I've got no idea what I'm doing, because your brain and body work together. And that's probably one of the key messages from tonight. And so you've got to have the likely finishing time. And also you've got to know how tough it's going to be. You know, how long are these 10 climbs, you know? Are they going to take an hour, hour and a half, 20 minutes, whatever? So you've got to have these clear event expectations of the demands of the course, but expectations of yourself. How are you going to respond to that? You know, are you going to pack a sad and just walk? You know, are you going to quit? You know, you've got to be able to know what's coming and then prepare on how you're going to respond. Okay, so for me, I run for the enjoyment. Probably back in 2009, I was probably a bit more hung up on finishing places. You know, I've developed and I'm improving and improving as an ultra runner. So I was probably, you know, a bonus to finish high up, but that's now, I was probably a bit too hung up on what it was there. But the overall is to enjoy it. So I had to look at how long is it going to take me. So I looked at the time of the British runners in 2008, and there was a chap called Andy Rankin. I'd raced him twice. He'd beaten me once. I'd beaten him, and he did it in 25 hours. I thought, yeah, 24, I can do that. So I also looked, because I'm over 40, I looked at what the winning time for over 40 was, and the guy did it in 24.5 or something. So I thought, yeah, okay, 23.59 target. Pretty ambitious, but you know, you look at James Craig, he can't even run, and he thought he could get in the top 50. And so I developed strategies. I looked at any positive evidence I could collate to get me to believe that I could do that. And that's what it was about. So I went out there and I spent hours and hours on my computer. This is my spreadsheet. I looked at order data. You know, these are the 10 climbs, 1, 2, 10 climbs. I work out to the minute how long I'm going to spend on every climb. So I know, you know, when I'm at this point, I'm going to be running uphill for an hour and 20. And then I run downhill for 25 minutes, then uphill for an hour and a half. So I'm prepared for that. So you know, that's all leading up to 2009. Time for a bit of video, just to really get a bit of the atmosphere. Hopefully this will work.
Fantastic.
They play this music non-stop for 50 hours. And this is at the start, 6:30. It's just awesome to see. I'm there somewhere. There, oh, I missed me. Okay, there's Liz Hawker there. Absolutely awesome. And I'm just behind here somewhere now. There's my hair. I'm losing my hair. It's just Scott Jurek. It's just great. Yeah, and just, you know, it ain't like an ultra usual, like 2,300 runners. It's like being at a football match, you know. And it's just fantastic. And I said, this music just, I just get excited just listening to the music. You know, look at that, you just, they sort of parts, you know, you can barely get through. And we run the first 2 miles on road. This is near the front, and then there's me here next to Scott Jurek from Born to Run. Liz is just behind me. It's fantastic. Okay, just another little clip, just so you can get a feel, and I'll just talk a little bit about, you know, the demands of the race. This is the first climb. It's an easy climb. It's only 55 minutes, you know, non-stop uphill. And this is Gillian Journet. He's won it 3 times, and it looks like he's going for a Sunday drive. And he's blown everyone away. We're all struggling up there, and this is running up the hill. He won it in 2003. And there's me there, going up, trying to run fast. And there's Liz Hawker, yeah. And it's just, look at the scenery. It's just, this is what you're running up, you know. You thought today's scenery was good. It's a bit further down the field, slightly different, lots of people around you. Notice the poles, they use poles. That's what you're running. It's just unbelievable. Your first 2 hours, you start up past 6. You have 2 hours, and then it gets dark. You get to the first big checkpoint, and it's like going into a street carnival. It's like a party. It's just, you come in, they have food station, you name it, whatever you want, soup, bars, you name it, you can have it. And it's a real buzz, you know. So that's sort of a little bit of feel about the race. So you know, it's all about, and my preparation, I watched videos from the previous year's race, I looked at the scenery, I looked at the climbs, and certain things, terrain, footwear. I don't know if you saw, Liz Hawker was wearing road shoes. I wear road shoes. Okay, the terrain is smooth, rock hard. You know, you don't need trail shoes for Mont Blanc. Food at feed stations, you name it. You can go from a 3-course meal to gels or whatever. Poles are not poles. The front end of the field is exactly 50-50. The top 20 runners, 10 will have poles, 10 will not have poles. So that says to me that they make no difference. So the guys that spend hours and hours and hours learning how to use them, it's a 50-50 split. So I will not use poles because I don't even know how to use them. And so if it was an advantage, you'd have 15 out of the 20 having poles. So don't use poles, waste of time. A lot of people say rubbish, but unless you know how to use them, it ain't going to help you. Atmosphere, you saw the atmosphere, it was fantastic. Pace intensity, you saw Gillian Journet, he was cruising. When you do ultra running, you cannot race for 24 hours. It ain't possible. So your intensity is really, really, really low. My heart rate's probably higher now than what it is during the race. So your preparation's totally different. It's not like doing a half marathon or a marathon. It is just, you're just cruising. You're just cruising, 120 heartbeat. It is, you know, so intensity, so bear that in mind when I talk about some training later on. You're running in the dark, so the first 2 hours is in the light, and then you come down into the village street party, it gets dark, and you run in the dark for probably 7 hours, 8 hours, and then you get light again. The total cutoff is 46 hours. How those guys have to run through 2 nights, I do not know. It's easier to run it faster, I tell you, you know. I only have to run through 1 night. Doing it 2 nights, you know, they are the guys that are really, you know, these doing extraordinary things, you know, because they have no sleep for 2 nights. You can miss 1 sleep, but I don't know how to miss 2. You have to be prepared for the weather, and so I have, lucky I got Montaigne, top quality clothing, and I use an Innovate backpack, so I have the best kit. So, 2009, I absolutely amazing, got 22nd, didn't get my goal, 24 hours. Yeah, too tough. But it was non-stop buzzing. I had a difficult patch in the 3rd climb, and like I said, I aimed to enjoy it, but I was quite hung up back in 2009. I thought, yeah, I can do this 2000, I can do this 24 hours and give me 6th, 7th place. So, you know, I was a bit hung up on that. So I had this difficult patch at about 5 hours in the race, and I thought, well, now I've got 19 hours to go. So back in those days, I used to carry the spreadsheet with me, and so I'd have the times. Since then, I've realised that that's not a good thing. So when I got to that 3rd climb, I took that spreadsheet and I threw it away. I thought, no, let's just enjoy it. And so I spent from 6-hour mark for the next 20 hours. I didn't even follow the spreadsheet. I just enjoyed it. And from that moment, I was in 55th place. I actually only overtook 13 people, and I got up to 22nd. So you can see how much dropout there is. There's typically about 45% dropout. This year there was a 52% dropout, so you can see it's not not that easy. I saw no runners for 7.5 hours. You know, you got 2,300 runners. I saw none for 7.5 hours. And some geezer caught me up with 10 minutes ago and thought, no way, he's passing me. So I just went and blasted it. But bit unsocial about that sort of stuff. But you know, I was running, I was buzzing non-stop. I had my family out there cheering me on. I had a mate from New Zealand who lives in Austria was cheering me on, and it was just fantastic. And you sort of, what's he got that Kiwi flag for? I have a dual identity. It's quite good. I go from Kiwi when we play rugby, and then I become an English Pom when they play cricket. You know, so that day I was a Kiwi, and I still had a marathon to go. You know, I'm pretty smiles all go. It was great. And that was at the finish line with Scott Jurek. I just read Born to Run. And he only beat me by 15 minutes. And I thought, oh, now. But, you know, look at those smiles. It was fantastic. Non-stop buzzing. But I didn't achieve my 24 hours, so I had to do it again. But, you know, if we just a quick, what do we do? How do you train for a 100-mile race, you know? Most people think, first thing, okay, got to run 100 miles, got to do that. My first thing is I've got to do research on the race and myself. So I know what the demands are, and I know what I want, what I'm expecting. And I spend visualizations. Okay, I will visualize different scenarios, running on my own, running in a big group, running up the hills. I know that first hill takes me 55 minutes. The second climb, when you go from 800 metres to 2,600, will take me 1 hour, 20 minutes. The next descent's 25 minutes. I visualise all these things. I visualise the mountains, I've watched videos, and I do that. So in my training, this is what I'm aiming to do, develop positivity, high expectations, confidence in myself, the belief, go back to James Cracknell, the belief that I can do 24 hours. Okay, if you don't believe it, you're wasting your time. You know, James Cracknell, everyone was telling me he couldn't do 50, he couldn't get in the top 50, and he just says, bollocks, I can do it, you know. Your training, your physical training contributes a lot to that. You know, if you're going for a 30-mile run and you're absolutely shattered and you think, oh man, I've got 3 times that, you know, that really affects your confidence. So your physical training is really important for developing this confidence. So what sort of physical training should you do? What's your physical training all about? Unfortunately, you know, you probably want to hear what my physical training is, but that ain't the secret. Your physical training, whether I do rep work, hill work, whatever, you know, there's 2 purposes. One is the physiological fitness. You might think it's a cop-out, but it doesn't really matter what physical training you do as long as you do it. Okay, that's what it's all about. You know, you can't do something like that without any physical training. But whether you do tempo runs, hill runs, long, slow, rep work, it makes no difference at all. You just got to do something, okay? And if you look at, you know, go back, Ovet versus Co. They did totally different training, but yet they ran identical times. So that sort of illustrates it doesn't matter what you do, you just got to do something, okay? So what's most important about physical training is this, to develop your confidence. That's my belief, but it's not just my belief. Look at some other people. What training is best? I don't know if you've come across this guy, Matt Fitzgerald. He's written some really good books, and this is what he says. Physical training is all about making you feel prepared. All it is about developing confidence. I did a talk up at the Lakeland 100, one of the Lakeland 100 recce talks back in June, and I asked the audience, what training do you need to run the Lakeland 100? And we got a poll, and some people says, I only need to do 30 miles. This is to run the Lakeland 100 to achieve your goal. Not to run the Lakeland 100 to win it, just to achieve your goal. And some guys said they had to do 120 miles a week to achieve their goal. Some people said they only had to do 30. What's the right answer? The right answer is what you believe you need to do. If you believe you have to do 70 and you've only done 50, you ain't going to achieve your goal. Because when it gets tough, you think, I know I had to do 70, but I've only done 50. And when it gets tough, that negativity will really play on your mind because you've believed you haven't done your preparation and you will not perform and you will not achieve your goal. So training is all about you believing what you need to do, developing your self-confidence. There's another quote from a clever chap. Success becomes automatic when your subconscious, okay, your subconscious accepts your goals as reality. And this is Gary Elliott from 1983. The advantages of having a dual identities, being a Pom and a Kiwi, is that I've got sort of input from two sporting heroes. And Alison Rowe, you probably never heard of her. Look what she did. Boston Marathon, New York Marathon winner. World record holder in 1981. She's Kiwi. And this guy said this way back in 1983. He was years ahead of himself. But it's about getting into the subconscious. It takes hours and hours and hours in preparation to get that belief subconscious. Okay, so what training is best? You know, and now we see I can go from a Kiwi to a Pom. And look at what Paula Radcliffe says. She goes to altitude, not to improve her blood physiology, to focus on what I want to do, her goals, what she's aiming to do when she does 2:15, you know. Oh, unbelievable. You know, I go to altitude to work on my mentality, psychology, not the physiology, the psychology. So this is what distinguishes these elite, the best in the world, from you and me, okay? Not their genes, not what they're born with, the way they prepare. So now let's move on to 2011. Here's me here on the start line. Here's Liz Hawker. I don't know if you follow ultra running. The best runner in Britain is Jez Bragg. Jez is just right there. I was having a chat to him. He DNF'd as well, so it's good to DNF in a good company. Okay, let's have a look at the start. You'll see what's different. It's dark. 2009, we started at 6:30. 2011, we started at 11:30. So there's a difference, and it was because it was miserable. It was raining. It was cold. Gillian Journay, he's smiling. There's Jez Bragg. There's Liz, and that's my backpack. I was next to Liz. And it's wet, it's cold. Here's the start. There's me. There's Liz trying to keep up with me. I didn't stay in that long. No. And it's similar atmosphere. I mean, for the people who've been there just 2011, they're probably blown away. Was anyone out there did it this year? Has anyone done Mont Blanc? No. Okay. But I was doing a talk up in Cheshire a couple of weeks ago, and one guy was there in 2009, and one guy was there in 2011, just like myself. And I said, what was it like this year? And he says, it was rubbish. It was rubbish compared to 2009. And it was. It was, and it was just, there was a real difference. And okay, it was still really good for those who had never seen it, but for people who had been there in 2009, it was a real downer. Anyway, I started off really fast. On my blog, if you want to hear some real way out ideas, go to my blog. So I've toned it down a bit tonight. But I was running, and Jez caught up with me just before 21. And remember, this is the best guy in Britain. And we're running in together at the first checkpoint, the so-called street party. At 1:30 in the morning, there's not so many people out for a street party. And I wear a GPS. I don't look at it during the race. I use it for afterwards to see how I got on. I missed the first half hour. This is actually in 2009. This is my heart rate. I have a belief, run as fast as you can while you can. So I run really fast at the start, 170. But then you can see it gets down to 120, and then it stays around 120 for the last 15 hours. These are the climbs. I've missed the first 8K flat, and you can see some of these big climbs. That's from 2009. If we put on this year, slightly different watch, so it smoothed it a bit better, but you can see very, very similar, very similar. You can see a bit of a long gap there. And at this point here, I'm in Italy, 2009, I got there at 8:58. Like I say, I no longer, I do the preparation, I still do a massive preparation, so I know I'm running up for an uphill for an hour 20, whatever. But I don't look at it. That gets into my subconscious during my preparation. So once I get to race day, I just go by feel. I just run by feel. Don't look at my heart rate. Don't look at split times. Just run by feel. 2009, 8:58. 2011, 8:52. The problem was, at that point there, I made the decision to pull the pin. Okay? This is from the video. At that moment in time, I'm sitting down. This is on the DVD, the share. This is the exact moment I made the decision to pull out. Not really happy, am I? And that was me thinking, bloody hell, how the hell am I going to run for another 18 hours? But yet, I was 7 minutes faster than what I was in 2009, but I didn't know that. The whole race had been sort of like a real downer, and it was just, I look at it now and I think, how could I get so negative in one of the biggest races, best race in the world? But I DNF'd. At that point in time, that was the exact moment I made that decision. I started to run 3 hours to catch a bus back. But I was just, that was it, I was gone. I'm sitting down, I never sit down. The moment you sit down, that's telling your body you're having a break. It was the first time in 17 years that I pulled out of a race voluntarily. I'd done 217 races in those 17 years since 1994. Well, even though I knew that 45% of people drop out, not for 1 millisecond was I going to drop out. I do not drop out, you know. So what happened? It was my poor preparation, okay? With my mind, I wasn't receiving what I expected. My visualizations, I'd visualise for running in snow, running in rain, but I'd visualise for a 6:30 start. I'd visualise for running up that first mountain, that scenery, you know, I run on emotion, and it was pitch black. I couldn't even see, I was been running through an industrial estate, I couldn't even see the French Alps. So it was dark, I had different atmosphere, different scenery. You know, when you're running in Scott Jurek's next to you, you know, you get a buzz. You're running next to Liz Hawker, you get a buzz. I couldn't even see them, they were running straight past me. So I was in a real negative. So this dark really played on it. Different atmosphere. I'd done really well at the Worlds. I went to the Worlds in July and I'd done really well. And I started talking to my mate, and I got first GB at the Worlds, but Jez didn't race at the Worlds. So this is my chance to try and take down Jez. And then I could sort of like be best in Britain. So, because I was first at the Worlds, he didn't race. And I started getting too hung up about, oh, it'd be great to beat Jez, it'd be really good. And I started thinking about the destination and really forgot about the journey. It's all about the journey, about enjoying yourself. I couldn't decide the clothing. You've got to carry your clothing and you've got to go for 7 or 8K and then you can dump it. And I didn't want to take too little, where it'd be nice and light, but I didn't want to take too much, where it'd be heavy and it would slow me down. And that was a real doubt. I'd been given an elite start place, so I didn't have to queue up. But I couldn't actually get into this elite area. And so I had to climb over the fence and barge my way through, and everyone was going, oh, puss off, what are you doing, you know? Why are you intruding us? And so that sort of really affected me. So I had a lot of negativity. The negativity had begun, you know, and this positivity, negativity really impacts performance. And there was a real downward spiral. And look at me on the start line, okay? You know, do I look like I'm ready to run the best race in the world? I mean, Liz Hawker does it much better. But she's just, I mean, you know, she managed to overcome that and she won for the third time, you know. But for me, I didn't, you know. Conditions were tough. 52% of people DNF'd. But then, look at that. Superb. Beautiful. But I didn't see it. I was too down, packed the sand. I was just too negative. You know, look at that. And I didn't see that. I was sort of like, you know. So some amazing, absolutely amazing. So just to summarise, you know, what happened, it was downward spiral. It does, this negativity and this positivity does really impact how you perform. I spent forever subconscious preparation, so I had visualised everything, but I thought I'd covered all possibilities, but I hadn't. And that being in the dark for those first 2 hours just blew me away, and I never recovered. And I look at it now and I think, why didn't I just stop, take half an hour out, and then continue? But, you know, you think of that now, but I didn't. I think too much focus on the result really got to me. I forgot what I was there for. I forgot about the importance of the journey. It's not about getting to the finish line. It's travelling along that journey, which is most important. And I forgot about that. And really, performance is determined by this interaction of the body and mind. Now, I think I was going to go on for another 10 minutes, but I've done 40 minutes. So I think just to keep the schedule, I'll open up for questions. But really, if you want to, if you maybe are thinking this geezer's got maybe a little bit of something worth saying, I recommend go to my blog. Like I say, you'll need more than 5 minutes, but I can respond to 10 minutes of questions now. But I haven't got a chance to talk about my model, but have a look on the blog and just send me an email. But I'll open up the questions for the next 10 minutes. So that's some of my Mont Blanc story. Thank you.